At the center of the universe, at the border between the light and the dark, stands Castle Grayskull. For countless ages, the heroes of Grayskull have defended the universe against the forces of evil. Walk through the Hall of Living Pictures and learn the history and mystery of the Masters of the Universe. Dive deep into the mythology of Eternia, Etheria, and more. For those who know the stories of Grayskull will come the power. The power to be supreme. The power to be all-knowing. The power to be Legends of Grayskull.
Hello everybody, and welcome to episode 14 of Legends of Grayskull, the fan podcast where we discuss the history, the mystery, the magic, and mythology of He-Man, She-Ra, Eternia, Etheria, Primus, Nordor, New Adventures, Old Adventures, Netflix Adventures, anything and everything you can think of with that Mattel logo, Masters of the Universe, Princess of Power, and even Mike Young Productions on it. I'm Matthew Dooch. I'm here with Shawn Scavarna over on the other side there. Shawn, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm actually excited. This is our very first episode where we are not alone. It's not just the two of us.
It's not just the two of us. And that's what this nice graphic beside me is here. This is our stand-in. We are joined today by a special guest host. He's been around the Masters community a very long time. He's worked on the Dark Horse stuff. He's a font of information. 2000X Trivia Master. He's the only two-time Legends of Grayskull no prize winner. Ladies and gentlemen, yes. I present to you our special guest host, Jukka Issakainen. Jukka, how are we doing today?
I'm doing good, and as a reigning champion of the no prize, thanks for inviting me. It's been a very, very long time since I've been on a podcast, either as a creator or host or guest or what have you. So I may be very rusty and will talk out of my ass many, many times, but hopefully the listeners will still enjoy it.
Hey, we have built the whole podcast on talking out of our butts, so.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I did forget about that. That's the one thing I forgot in that intro that I wanted to slip in there, because the first time I listened to you was, I believe it was called the Masters Comic Cast, if I'm recalling it correctly.
Yes.
For the DC comics that were coming out years ago.
Yeah, that was the first venturing in completely new, like our own little podcast. I think Rob Bass from Roast Google Dinner was the main guy handling it, and I think he wanted it to be, as I recall, a longer format where we'd go into at the time, because it was a big deal that we got. First, they announced in that there will be the 30th anniversary mini comics with classics figures, and that already was like huge thing at the time in the fandom. And then they got the information that also DC Comics will make this 6-issue miniseries, and I was so excited that we're getting actual proper media, as the bios were still a relatively new thing, and I was warming up to it, shall we say, because some of the early ones, they sort of muddied the canon and information on some things. So I ended up always talking with fans and having to be like that. Well, this stems from there, and that line is from this, and these have nothing to do with each other. But the comics were something that I was like really into, and I was like, okay, 3 mini comics, 6 regular issues. And I was like, okay, so 9 episodes, limited thing. We can do this. I'll have the attention span for 9 episodes at least. And And we started, and they also, I think, later announced in the information that there would also be the digital only
those
issues. So they started with those first.
And those kind of came out of nowhere. I remember that because that first one popped up on Comixology, and initially we all thought it was actually the first issue of that miniseries because it was close to release date. It was like only a couple weeks before, and we thought they were just releasing it digitally earlier, and then they're like, oh no, we've got this whole thing of digital comics. So that was a surprise. God, I remember those days. It was great.
Yeah, it was the whole the getting very nostalgic to something like 2012. So I mean, okay, almost a decade, but
yeah,
it's it was very wild times because the first one came out, and then like in 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, suddenly the second one came, and they switched up, if I recall. I think it was meant to be Battle Cat, but then it became actually Man at Arms. And these were like, it was like Wild West. You didn't know what the heck was going on, and how long the digitals would be going. There was no info like that. This is 1 out of 17 or anything, and at the same time we just had gotten the first issue of the horrible Amnesia storyline. So I have so many pet peeves about it, but I'll try and be short about it in the sense that it wanted to start something new during a time when the classics were making their own stories. So there was the confusion that where do these stories fit in? What are these stories even? And since the digitals, they didn't seem to tie in with the actual first miniseries. So it was also like, well, which one goes where? And the Amnesia storyline, I keep telling people years and years after when the comics were coming out, and I had the DC Comics, I had a blog and a website, the Facebook He-Man Eternity War, and we kept updating the information, and I had some very good contacts with the writer, illustrator, and colorist, and made some fun interviews with them. But I just, on a personal level, I kept always saying that skip the first story arc, because all the information you will get, as long as you also check the DC crossover, that is handling especially the Orko topic much better. And they were getting, they had a very rough start, but they got better the more they went along. But it's like the Amnesia storyline, it should have how should I say it, make more effort in basing that, what is the world, where does everything stand, and because one of the easiest story aspects in movies and whatever is like, you need to have the what's the word, like the audience, the viewpoint. You need to have a character who is sort of that audience can relate, and they can experience this new world or this adventure with them. But they didn't do that. They sort of expected that you have to know something already about Masters, but at the same time they changed so many of in-universe rules that you couldn't like rely on anything that, oh, this is clearly 2000 based, or this is clearly Filmation based, or no, it's from the Golden Books or the mini comics, or it was like so frustrating.
And it's funny because what you just said about ignore the Amnesia storyline and go to the ongoing, I think just a couple episodes, Shawn, I brought up that I said exactly the same thing. So we're right there with you. But yeah, well, it was an exciting time for Masters, and I've always said the biggest problem with all of that is that DC was doing basically the end of Masters, leading up to Eternity War and everything. But like you said, that initial ongoing didn't let anybody know they were doing the end, the end times of Masters. So once they got going and found their rhythm, that is an amazing series, and that is that's like the one. Well, that and the MVC comics, those are those two topics that me and Shawn are like those ones we need to get to sooner rather than later that we haven't touched on yet.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things, and side note, you can edit this out if you want or keep it in. But I mean, they really, with the DC comic, they didn't know how far they were probably gonna get, because they came very close to canceling it right before issue 13, which is the start of the whole King Grayskull story arc, which people did like, and that's the thing that also started more gearing up to it for the Eternity War. But they had some rough moments, and it came very close to getting cancelled, but they negotiated something and got it continued, and then even the Eternity War, they had like 16 issues or 15, I forget.
Yeah, something like that. The Maxi series, I remember that phrase. It was the first time I'd heard that one. But yeah. But the Eternity War, that's when things started going, Oh, great series. So tell us a little bit, Jukka, if you can. I mean, I've known you in name and from your posts since I can remember on the He-Man.org forums and everything else. So, if you want to briefly tell us kind of about your introduction to Masters. I assume you were a fan from the 80s on. And then today we're going to discuss 2000X, so maybe a little bit about how you got into 2000X, if you were at the beginning, ready to go like me, or if you were a grumpy old man like Shawn who took a while to come around.
I was a sweet 16, 17 years old when that came around, so I was at the time one of the youngest members on He-Man.org forums.
So you're actually closer in age to me than you are Shawn then, because I was in high school when that came out. I'm born in 85.
1 year older.
Okay, yeah.
I am 84.
Yeah. So
the height of Masters toy sales in America. But yeah, so in Finland we got the Filmation cartoon on TV, and toys came out in stores, just regular places you would go. Then we also had a translated comic, which I've mentioned a couple times, that was a sort of defining thing for me, how I adjusted myself as a kid already. Because there's the age-old question with some fans that what brought you into this fandom? And it's the one I see most is like, are you older enough to be like from the first mini comics and the box art and all that, or are you a cartoon person? And that's like the interesting dividing thing. I mean, it's something that shouldn't obviously divide anyone, but it's the easiest and closest that people can make a distinction.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when people are fans, they can like, it's always very fascinating. And whenever I'm talking with another fan, it's very curious to learn something that they talk about their hobby and what toys they played with, but at the same time they might go like, I didn't know there was a ninja guy in the toy line.
Yeah.
And I being born in 84, there were Masters toys around in 88, 89, so it still was very effective because one of the most often childhood memories that I've quoted on, I think, one book. Was it the Roger Sweet one?
Mm-hmm.
No, that was something else. But and a couple of podcasts and on websites. So is that I got the vintage Castle Grayskull when I was 4 years old, Christmas '88, and it was like such a huge impact. I actually had no clue that that was the big package that was. Well, I was a youngest child of the whole slew of relatives, so I knew that it must be for me, but I had no clue that it would be that. And my father was opening the package, and there are a couple of photos where I'm like just very stunned looking at it, and others where we have the instructions, and obviously the adults had to actually start looking at how you put it together because I was just running wild.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
No, I got the same thing. I've got the pictures from my birthday and I've shown them on here before of me getting Castle Grayskull and just being stunned. Remember when they kept toys in the store for more than like 3 months? Like that was great.
Yeah,
it's those nostalgic times, and going back to it, there were many of those that the Castle Grayskull playset, it looked closer to the Filmation version, and the Filmation one was where I based most of the mythos that I had about the characters, and that's why I'm so grateful that Filmation wasn't just a 20-minute toy ad. I mean, if you think that if you think that it's a toy ad, then they did a poor job. Like, come on, four to five characters. Always no variant costumes, no new vehicles until like second season, no new characters maybe, and if they pop up, I mean, it's like one episode or background. Like, what is this? This is a very poor commercial. Like, people they want to rag on the show, but it's like they don't maybe remember most of the episodes, so it's more of a generalization thing. But that was the basis.
That's what I bring up all the time. Is it's they have not revisited the show. They're going off what other people say, and the characters you remember, the secondary characters, are ones that weren't even available as toys. You remember the Malactas, the Lord Masses, Cody, Lizard Man, like, and they were never even in the toy stores. So no, we're right there with you.
Mm-hmm. But it's like you may think someone like Manny Faces from all other media, like posters and comics, mini comics and whatnot, he only had like 3 episodes. Mossman has maybe 3 episodes as well, I think. So it's like,
if that, yeah.
On that perspective, they're on the same line, but you'd ask people, do they remember Mossman? They might not, but they can remember Manny Faces because he was one of the earlier characters. But yeah, the comics we got in Finland, they were translated, and they had stories. They had the DC miniseries 3-parter, slightly edited, mostly because it was in one giant comic. That was one of the good things in Finnish comics. I'm not sure if it's still on today, but I mean, our regular comic would be closer to the 30 or 40 pages. You'd actually get a proper story and no ads in between. In versus when I later would get my first American comics actually were the MV Creations 2002 He-Man comics, and I'm like, what is this? There's like 16, 18 pages of the actual comic, and there's a whole bunch of these ads, and this is so flimsy. So like, I mean, because it was a very culturally different thing, because in Finland they it's not like a trade, but it was a bit of a thicker comic, and so you actually had a full story arc at times.
Sounds more like the UK annuals, or more like a magazine for us than a comic, really.
Yeah, might be closer to that.
Yeah.
So they had material from, there was the DC miniseries in one issue, but it was the UK stories.
Okay.
And the UK ones, I mean, they had also from the German stories later on, when they had there's a whole website by Aiden Cross, so I suggest everyone go look at the Masters UK comic site.
Yes.
But it's
I still have to catch up on all those, and I'll drop a link down below there if you're watching this on YouTube or listening on Podbean. I'll drop a link down below to that website so you guys can easily find it.
Yeah, but those comics, that I mean, the UK comics, they're not set in Filmation. They're very much own story, and later also when they started coming with the German stories, those also had at that point a different artist altogether, so it was much more fantastical, very organic looking. When the earlier stories, they had maybe a bit more medieval look,
right.
But already from that I was like, okay, something that happens in cartoon does not get referenced in the comic necessarily, and vice versa. And clearly this isn't like something that I can, these events happen after this episode or one. So I, at a very young age, I already had this, like, I need to separate these, compartmentalize everything. This is not a one cohesive story. There, everything's like a spider web. It's going in so many different directions, and sometimes they may interject with others and come together, and but it's like with the mini comics, there clearly are wave 1 stories, there's wave 2 stories, and I think I've mentioned it at some point that around when the Evil Horde is introduced in mini comics, Mattel was gearing up more with actual like plan that, okay, now we're going forward with this theme and we actually have a grasp on everything.
Yeah. And that's interesting, the way that came out, because like I've said before on the show, Shawn, that's more Shawn's view of everything, because he was that way, where he remembered the first wave, and then the records came out, then DC came out, then Filmation came out. But for me, all that, like, learning about the different continuities didn't really happen until the internet, when I was able to go back and see all the different mini comics and all the UK stuff and everything. One thing I want to ask real quick here, that with the toys and everything, were you over in Finland, were you guys pretty much on the same release schedule as the US, or were you like pushed back, do you know? Like, were the waves coming out around the same time?
That's actually something I haven't researched all that much. I mean, I personally had most of the later wave figures, so Sorcerer's Clamchamp, Randor, and Extendar, Rotar. I did have like He-Man, Skeletor, Teela, Man at Arms, but I never had like a Trapjaw. Like most.
Uh-oh. Jukka, you alright? Shawn, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Might have lost Jukka there. It's still showing him here.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh. Let me send him a message. And I'll give a shout out right quick here while we're waiting to see what happened. And this is the fan art here that I used for Yuka. That's from Eric Marshall, Jibagak on the He-Man.org forums. He did that as he's actually got a whole thread of them over there of unofficial fan bios. So that's a character he made based on Yuka. So we're using that as a stand-in since we only had audio for Yuka. Yep, he says now he can't hear us either. So
weird.
Let's give it a minute, see if he can get back in here. And let me send him a message, see if he wants to drop out and come back in. We were doing so good for a while there, and now we had, a couple episodes ago, we had you dropped out before I showed off my my custom there, and then
my PTSD.
Right.
That damn fish. All right, he's
okay.
Hey!
There he
I
is.
can at least hear you guys.
We can hear you now too. That was weird, and you even in my recording software here, there was nothing on the volume there for a minute, so that was weird.
Curious. My microphone still had the light on and didn't accidentally unmute or anything. So yeah, it's maybe I have the very old going to despondos that Roast Football had.
I was thinking that with Eamon.
The old Eamon, yeah, it would kick him out. I forgot about that, man. I gotta tell you that, you know what? If you're a newer fan to this community, there is such a long history here. Like talking to you guys and everything is just like stuff pops up in my mind I haven't thought about in years. Especially going 2000X tonight. The one thing I was thinking about, Yuka, I don't know if you remember, or Shawn, if you ever stumbled across this. You remember back when 2000X was airing, somebody, and I can't remember who, used to do like music videos for episodes after they came out. They did like "It's My Life" by Bon Jovi to "The Courage of Adam," and like "Flight of the Bumblebee" to "Skyward." You remember those?
Those ones are by John
Callis, the Shadow.
Yeah, he did maybe 3, and later there's a German fan, Frank Oftring. Ofty. He did like on Baywatch theme and Poison. Some very some also on Filmation topics. I think I have a couple of them still on my old hard drive. They were very wonderfully done. I mean,
they were, especially for
in a time when he had to like record the clips from VCR to computer and then edit. And I'm not sure even what editing software he used, but I mean they were done very well.
Yeah.
And but yeah, John Callis did the ones you mentioned from 2000X. Awesome. He was the one whenever a new episode would come out, he would take screen captures of the episode, and everyone was just like dying to see how a new character looked or an old familiar with new. But
I remember that those discussion threads, he'd start them right before the episode aired, and as the episode was airing, he was putting stuff up there. And especially the overseas fans who just could not watch it anyway were always just like constantly posting and everything and oh, what's happening now, and people were putting this, typing what's happening on the episode. it was a frenzied time for Masters back when this show was coming out. So, how was it for you guys over in Finland? Were you guys on track with us, or were you delayed?
Well, the episodes came to Europe 1 year later, and but I mean, I was since I had gone online around 98 at school actually, and I think 99 we got a computer with a 56k modem
Yep.
at our house. So though those were my first going to Alta Vista and Ask Jeeves and all that stuff, and finding He-Man sites,
Yep.
which basically were, I think I mentioned it in one of my videos that it was the He-Man.org, and then Busta and Zadok's, the episode review website, and then Masters Unbound, which was a holy trinity. They all had their own different aspects, but at the time I geared mostly to James's website because it had the in a time when we didn't know how many episodes there were, and not everyone had seen all the filmation, and so when they did their every Saturday at 12 on the noon at UK, but it was 2 p.m. here, I knew to find a new review of a He-Man or a She-Ra episode, and you could read the synopsis for the story. Then James had the commentary thing where he would go over animation things and techniques and something like, oh, here's a same scene used, or here's a interesting, and you had the sound files and then later also the video files, which is like MPEG at like 2 minutes, and it was maybe 10 megabytes, and it took my modem like 1 hour to get that one single video file.
Those were good times.
So it was at a, you really had to work for it, and I remember I had never seen Into the Abyss episode, so when I found I had already listened to the clip on audio many times over, where there's the famous scene of, well, Tila in the fall into abyss and Adam changing, and later they updated this the page with the video, and I was like gobsmacked when I saw that, and it's like holy crap, this was an actual episode, like I need to get these. And that was the time when you would have people making VHS copies and sending them overseas, and actually that was also one of the, I mean, I kept emailing James many times with very fanboy filmation questions, and he was always very gracious on answering to this annoying young Finnish fan. But it's our friendship was forged, and going still couple decades later. But
that's actually how we got hooked up with Jukka, is when we started this podcast. You were actually the very first person to message me after that first episode dropped, and I still remember what you said, because in the show I'd said hey, if anyone knows something we got wrong or anything, let us know, drop us a message. And sure enough, just within a day after that episode dropped, the first message from Jukka was, were you serious about wanting to know if you got something wrong? And I'm like, yeah. And then like these like 3 or 4 messages like come back to back, and ever since then Yuka's been the one. If I got something wrong, he's the first to point it out. So which resulted in being our 2-time no prize winner. So
yeah,
and we're grateful for it. I love it, honestly. I am very much about getting the information out there, getting it out there right. That's what this whole podcast was founded upon, is to inform and entertain. So I've always appreciated that from you, Jukka.
I like to think that I've learned my lesson a couple times the hard way that I actually remembered to first say, do you actually want feedback? I don't always remember to do that, and in this day and age, people may take it the wrong way, and it's it's obviously never my intent. I if people are curious about something, and if I have any ways of digging up that info, I'd like to share it, be in a video or whatever. But it's sometimes online when you discuss it's people can misinterpret things, and you need to remember to use smileys a lot. So because it's very different. You could say some of these things face to face if you're in a convention with fans, but they will read your face and body language that they're just trying to help. They're not being like a asshole about it.
No, exactly. It's text is tough, and that's one of the reasons the message boards and everything have kind of waned for me, especially when we can do stuff like this, or like me and Shawn, we send each other voice clips back and forth on Messenger all the time because it gets your point across better. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
In 1 minute cycles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it forces you to pick and choose. Getting to the point, and he poor Matt, he has had to dig through probably 15 in a row of me just going on a rant, and then after he's done, he's like, I'm halfway through, I'm trying to work though, but I'll get back to it, I promise. I hear that at least once a week from him. So yeah,
that's exactly it. But it's good, but it's awesome that all this technology is here, that we're able to connect overseas like this, state to state. I mean, Shawn and I live 3-4 states away from each other, so it's cool to be able to do that. So let's loop it back. We kind of got sidetracked, as we always do. So 2000X, what was your introduction to that? Like, you got the forums, the boards, then you saw in Europe a year later. How'd you become the master of it? What was it about 2000X where you're like, okay, this is... obviously you know a ton. I'm not saying you don't, but 2000X seems to be your wheelhouse. So how'd you get there?
I just copied James.
Fair enough.
I idolized him a lot. I still do. He's an awesome guy,
absolutely.
But he knows to be more humble about things. He was the He-Man cartoon guy, and I had found the forums, which was a really new thing to me at the 99 2000. I mean, I had mostly dealt with just emails. That was a new thing that everyone was doing, and in our school we had to learn it, and they were actually very good that they had an actual class where they were like, okay, now we're gonna teach you to use Word and Excel and email and HTML, and here's a front page 89, here's a front page Express, you can make your own website using these. And I was like, I can make my own website, holy hell. Like, if I can make my own website, I mean, not everyone has those. Like, this will be awesome. I can whatever write, and at the time I was doing some art and I wanted to share those. And with the package in Finland, when you get a internet provider, you get online, they also gave you a certain amount of website space. So you could create your own website on their server.
Nice.
That is.
Because I mean, obviously you could go at the time to some horrible place like GeoCities and have like seven pop-ups come out every time you click on anything. But so I had a own website. I had different names of like Masters of Castle Grayskull and Jukka's He-Man page and Jukka and the Masters of the Universe and all these. Like I was like 17 at the time, so it was like just new territory. But learning HTML and all that was fascinating, and putting something like a link in a image was a big deal. That when you click on an image, that it would actually also be a link to something. That, like you had to know your stuff to do that. So
I still struggle with that to this day.
But yeah, so very, very tangenty. And but looking at James's website, I learned a lot from it, and he had very nice graphics on the banners, and that was what inspired me to get a digital program to color, and that set me off in a completely different, like with comic coloring path. Can't really call it a career when it's like, oh, here's a front cover every 6 months maybe. So,
but it's something.
But it's been fun, and it also opened some doors later on as we go on this memory lane, especially with 2000X stuff. So yeah, I was on the forums and learning those when the information that there would be commemoratives, and that was a big deal at the time, and I was like thinking, oh, maybe we'll get something in Europe and in Finland, and yeah, no.
You never got any of the commemoratives over there?
No, it was such a small run. None of the. I had a friend whose dad actually was a CEO of one of these supermarkets, and I very directly, as a snotty-nosed 18-year-old, would be like that, hey, will you guys get these on your shelves? And he was like, yeah, we don't really deal with the Finland Mattel, and I don't think that's gonna happen. So had to first time actually get people to help me, and it was one of those cases that I didn't know what was gonna go down, but I found people on the org forums who helped, and at the time there was no PayPal or anything, so
money orders.
I did one time I did send actually cash in an envelope, but other times I sent money orders, and like, so I never got gypped with those. So I got my commemorative Trapjaw Faker, and then some guy JVS3 helped me get the commemorative 5-pack with Prince Adam.
I have that 5-pack,
which I still have.
I think I've heard of that JVS3 guy here and there. He's done a couple things.
Yeah.
Nothing big though.
Nah.
Yeah. But then came the information that there would be Mattel doing something for the 20th anniversary of He-Man, some toys.
Right.
And that was already a big deal. And we were getting all the information mostly on He-Man.org, because there wasn't all that many like pop culture or geek websites, or there were some toy related websites, but I never really went into them myself. They may have also had the information, but I just personally never went there.
Yeah, well, it wasn't
so
too
my
much.
only source
not
was
like now, that's for sure. Toy Fair magazine, that was the big thing here.
and it's like that. So I only had the one site and the one forum to get the information, and so they had the information of the toys, and I was ecstatic and told my friend about it. And then there was some info that, oh, maybe there will be some animated special.
Yep.
And people still at the time were like, hey, maybe Lou Scheimer Productions can make it, because this is still at the time when early on we were finding out things like the Filmation series Bible, but also the 96 Lou Scheimer Productions own series Bible, which was the Hero Son of He-Man.
It was exciting times.
A completely different thing from the actual Filmation show and all that, but people got it confused a couple times. And things like seeing Mattel style guide images where you'd see information that, oh, here's a bio for Clamp Champ or Rotar or whatever, and something like maybe Scareglow that actually confirms that no, he's not the future ghost of Skeletor himself. So people had access to these, but getting something completely new was like even more like groundbreaking, and thinking that, oh, this is the best we'll ever get. And it's weird remembering that time, because I mean, we didn't know any names of like who did the card back illustrations, who wrote some of the mini comics, who did what, and who created anything. It's like it was a sort of wandering in the dark lands, but getting something new for the shelves was extremely exciting, and maybe getting a animated special on top of that. I mean, it was like this is the second new coming of Masters, and at the time, I mean, there was already Transformers were getting like the Armada cartoon, and I think G.I. Joe had some comic series, and Thundercats also around that time had a comic. So there was the whole like it felt like a phenomenon that all these 80s properties, everything was getting revamped somehow. So He-Man there was like, finally we'll have longevity for the characters and the brand. It's not simply something that happened in the 80s and only a few of us remember it.
Exactly, and it was heralded. I mean, it was amazing. The Horsemen revealed their toy designs. You know, Mike Young Productions followed soon after, and it was basically loved by fans and critics alike. You know, He-Man went from becoming a punchline in some of these magazines and stuff to like, hey, no, this stuff is legitimately cool now. And it was great seeing all that stuff back on the shelves. Turtles, they followed soon after there with their revamped line and cartoon and everything, and it was a neat time, very neat time. I hope we didn't lose you, Gigan.
Nah. I thought you had more to say.
Yeah, I get going, and then sometimes I forget where I was going with that. But yeah, and so the cartoon hit, and it turned out to be more than just a special. It was a whole series, which was unfortunately cut short. We mourn that fact to this day. And that's pretty much what we're going to talk about here today. So Jukka, if you want, since you picked this episode, we're very polite here at Legends of Grayskull. We like to let the guest pick. Why don't you kind of introduce the show we're talking about today?
So, the episode from first season, Lessons, written by Larry DiTilio, the late great.
Indeed.
And this is a special episode that I've tried to make everyone see, but they don't always remember it in the same way. Some of it stems from being a Filmation fan first and foremost, but it's like people obviously, when the show started, they were like, what is this anime stuff, and the twirling of the swords, and they hold on to that even today. And it's like, no, that's like maybe first some episodes, but it's not like that for the whole first season by any stretch of imagination, but it left a mark on people. But at that point, this is like the 7th episode.
Yep.
They had established very clearly that they had a serialized approach with the show. You had the beginning story, and then immediately episode 4 follows on that, and even episode 5, and bringing more races and characters into it, and episode 6 revisits something that was only like couple episodes earlier.
Yes, episode
Horrible.
Episode 6 is actually Shawn's
fish monster.
Yeah, that's Shawn's favorite episode.
He said it. He said it. He said horrible fish monster. I heard him. We have it recorded for posterity. It's on there.
Yeah, no, that flying fish is Shawn's favorite character from all the series combined. It's great.
That fish makes me want to bash my head against the wall every time it shows up on this series, and I love this series. So you know how mad I get.
Episode 6 has only 2 minutes worth of material for the overarching story. Otherwise, you are not missing out anything. No new information, no character development, no character chemistry. Just the last 2 minutes are that actually kinda not save, but is what is the whole thing that makes it worth existing.
Yes.
That Skeletor learns about Castle Grayskull, and that there's something there. And not a very flattering image of sorcerers with the backwards skirt, but it's they had some mistakes here and there.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing. This show, to remind everybody, was completely drawn. It did not rely on the stock system like Filmation did, where you're getting these same poses kind of traced over and redrawn every episode. This was drawn from scratch, and I think that really it's good and bad, because there are episodes like this one where I just watched this earlier today when I was on break at work, and like the animation in here throughout I thought was top notch. This is one of the best animated episodes of the series. But yeah, you did have those episodes that felt really rushed animated wise. I don't know if you guys felt the same way about the series.
It's a topic on its own. There are some they switched the studios where they had it. You can find them on the credits if you have the Cartoon Network aired versions. The DVD ones sadly kind of have a let's say bastardized version of the credits where they just put all the information at once. But I mean, it was a topic that the fans had even during the run of the show, that some episodes the faces were off model and whatnot, and they'd look into that. Oh, this was done by Dong Wu Studio instead of Dong Yang Studio.
I remember that now. Yep.
And it's and yeah, the MYP show is hailed for like, oh, this is the first time ever we got to see how Adam became He-Man, and it's like, sure, if you never read any comic or a book or a mini comic or in the 80s, the story is there. Like, but people are mostly familiar with the cartoon, and that's fine. But it's one of those personal pet peeves again that I've tried to look into these origin stories and the differences and all that for my video series. So it's there's an abundance of information, and especially nowadays with Google and everything, and many of the comics, they're like scanned on online website. You can, or torrents or whatever. Sorry. So
we here at Legends of Grayskull do not endorse any sort of file sharing that may be illegal in your country or region.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna do it, there are places out there.
Well, not to rub it in again, but I listened to the first episode. I remember you saying, "Yeah, my family used to tape the video and it's like Men in Black coats are just going to be knocking at your door,
Yeah.
man. I'm telling
And
you."
actually,
FBI warning
for this series, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but even here in the U.S., the Council of Evil, the two-parter that was supposed to end the season, Cartoon Network did not air it in the U.S. when they first aired season 1 because they felt that the kids would get confused by there being the cliffhanger. And so they ended it at the island. And they did not air the Council of Evil until they started airing season 2 with The Last Stand. And
Yeah, Canadians had it better.
yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. But Canada, they played through the whole season 1 and aired Council of Evil. So somebody may have found a, let's say, like a place called LimeWire. Let's say I'm just making that name up.
Yeah, I remember LimeWire.
And may have spent like a day downloading 2 episodes to his computer at the time, and it was probably like 28 hours to finish downloading all that. And
it didn't stall, and it didn't make you restart or anything. The files were still up there.
No.
I remember.
Well, it did.
That's
Part of the problem. Is it kept restarting. It kept dropping out and dropping in, but finally, me and my friends, we gathered around my computer and we watched. I mean, somebody watched. I'm not saying it was me. Somebody watched Council of Evil pretty shortly after it aired there. So
nice.
Hey, you had to do what you had to do back then. But
we have you on record now. Go in.
Well, I don't usually edit the episodes, but I might have to make an exception this time.
Oh man.
Yeah,
well, I caught him on YouTube.
The episode, I'll message you like so many things, like, okay, cut this part where I said this, and cut that, and cut this, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, and I think I came off weird there, so cut everything off.
You've been good so far.
You have
just
like
hello,
goodbye from me.
There's a few words me and Shawn try to avoid, but yeah, there's you've been good. You've been good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hang on one second. I'll be right back. Shawn, why don't you jump into how kind of your first thoughts or for how you first came to this episode. I'll be right back.
Cool. How I came to this episode, basically YouTube. Like I was not the guy watching it weekly, unfortunately, because I didn't have cable at that point in my life. I didn't have access to Cartoon Network, and to be honest, at that point, I didn't even know about the org yet. But I was buying the figures. I knew there was a cartoon out because of the Courage of Adam VHS that they were putting in these packages with the battle sounds characters. But I'm glad I got to watch them the way I did, because I think if I would have ended with that season finale, I would have been just like chomping at the bit, like I have to see what happens next. That would have driven me crazy. I'm really glad that I didn't have to go through that. I got to binge them before binge was a thing. So, but yeah, this episode in particular, I think this was like 2000X took a little while for me to warm up to, and I think my expectation going in, like you were saying, Jukka, about people were saying, oh, it could be maybe like Filmation. It could be, oh, Lou Scheimer can come back and all that stuff. So I wasn't expecting that, but there was a part of me that thought, well, that's kind of the way that it's been represented. So the theme song to me was essential, and some of this other stuff was essential. And then when I watched the first episodes I watched, I was like, what are they doing with this? Like, because like, you know, I wanted to hear the old Shuki Levy theme song, and I'm like, they're going like Lord of the Rings with this. Like, what this, and the flavor was off, the feeling was off. But when I started watching them on YouTube and getting to go through them, I really liked this episode, because we've talked about it already on the show, me and Matt, that when Larry DiTillio writes certain characters, you can feel that Filmation influence in them. And in this one in particular, he not only nods at that with how Orko saves Adam and all that stuff, but he has the sorceress kind of feeling a little more motherly, like the sorceress that we grew up with, and some of that. So yeah, this one was kind of like a good turning point for me in enjoying the whole series, to be honest, because there was that feeling again of this is why I loved it when I was a kid, and now I feel it again as an adult, that those elements are starting to come into it again.
Yeah, for sure. I feel the same way. This one, whenever Larry wrote the characters, he got them. He nailed them. And this one, there's stellar performances by the sorceress, who could come off way too cold in this series. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
Battle Cat, He-Man. There's some good action. It's a good story. And it adds new elements. So we might as well jump right into it. I don't know if we need to do quite the play-by-play, but we'll kind of streamline. So this episode first opens up here. I do have to say I think we did say it was written by Larry DiTillio. It was directed by Gary Hartel, I believe. Yes. And
all the episodes have Gary as the director.
Do they?
But yes, so I mean, it's in Filmation it was a different thing. They would have different writer director, but in MYP everything has Gary's name as the director. Though from storyboard point of view, Jay Oliva had some influence there, but he's not like widely credited as episode director, but Gary is. Not taking anything away from either one of them, but it's something I learned along the way.
Interesting. I hadn't even caught on to that yet, and I probably should have, because we've done quite a few 2000X episodes. But yeah, okay then. But there's a lot of great people working on this, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say some have been a part of other series, like Jay Oliva that you were talking about. I know he's moved on to. He was on Justice League, I think, or Justice League Unlimited. I want to say. I know he's
on a lot of the DC animated products.
The DC and then Joaquin Dos Santos also was someone who worked on the series, and he also had a good hand in like the Justice League Unlimited, I know, and the Voltron series that Netflix put out and stuff too. So these guys have graduated and gone on to other brands that we still enjoy. So it's really cool.
Absolutely. And I always like this opening sequence here because, like Jukka pointed out earlier, we're still seeing them finishing up the repairs to the castle, which was damaged all the way back in the beginning, part 1. And I like that. I like that as a teenager at the time when this came out. I really liked the fact that not everything was just reset to the status quo at the end of the episode. You still had beginning, middle, and end to these episodes, but it served the larger picture too. And it's a neat little gag with Orko in the beginning here. They're trying to finish up the statues of the elders, getting them back up, and then I think it's Man-Arm says that the last wall will finally be back in place by the end of the night. So it's nice to see them actually having to sit down and repair everything that Skeletor destroyed.
Yeah. And then they have problems of their own because of who's on their team.
Yeah.
So
Shawn, I know how you usually feel about Orko, especially when he's the childlike. But Jukka, what do you prefer for your Orko? Do you like him a little more childlike or a little more competent, somewhere in between?
Somewhere in between. He's going from the Filmation that, I mean, the writers there sometimes they handled him like a teenager, sometimes the very, very young kid who doesn't know anything. I prefer that he still has the childlike qualities that may get him into some trouble, but at the same time he still is a very competent magician. I mean, there are also even Filmation episodes where he just does his thing and it helps hero survive something because Orko made a giant
Yeah.
lightning bolt or whatever, but they're a bit few and far between. So the general consensus is that he's the bumbling character, the child. But I do like it when they actually show him be useful, and they had gotten at this point in the show over the Orko acting a bit too immature with like, oh, you wouldn't know that it's actually Adam who's this hero guy. It's like they learned from that, and it was also one of those that people for a really long time seem to just remember sort of those awkward moments, and it was harder like by episode maybe 13 that no it's getting much better, people. I mean, but at the time when we were I was basically just trying to live through them on the forums through other people when they were like screaming if a new character came on screen or other elements that happened or something did, but it's like I got some of the VHS tapes recorded by a friend on the forums, and he would send them like every 6 or 7 episodes to me. And I had a close friend, Mikko, who had a VCR that sort of could play the American NTSC format. The voice was okay on the tape. The colors weren't as saturated. They were a bit tanned, but we could watch the episodes, and we were just ecstatic. And like, so I had episodes come through the post every 6 or 7. So I had like at least 5 tapes just for the first season, I think. And it's like they were just amazing to watch, but obviously when they came actually here on Finland, it was much better quality, but then they dubbed it, so I didn't get the English version that the original He-Man in Finland on our TV network had, with just Finnish subtitles.
Oh, really?
But the whole 2000X dubbing thing, it's its own thing where I get to play one of the characters. So
I'm sorry, you said you got to play one of the characters?
Yeah, I went to interview the dubbing cast, and they were like, well, since you're a big fan, do you want to record something? And
nice.
That's how I became.
Wait a minute here. I like how humble he is about this. Like, he's just like, oh yeah, just I just got to record a character for the show. Is that? Do you guys not all get to record characters for the show? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but
I've touted it so many times during the past decade that
I miss that
feel
somehow.
Like it's not the biggest accomplishments at that point. So, but I'm the Finnish voice of Captain Miro.
Wow!
Oh,
nice. I gotta go look these up now somehow.
Jeez.
Yes, no, somehow I missed that all these years. That's very cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but yeah, that just took me by surprise. So did you ever get did they ever release a PAL format of the English He-Man, the 2000X?
Not that I recall. In Finland, we got the first season in PAL, but it's the dubbed version. There's no other audio tracks on it. At those 2002, 2004, the DVDs for children's animated. I mean, they don't give much options anyway, and even DVD format was such a new thing that you have like Matrix or whatever, and there's like special features include interactive menu, and looking at these like seriously that you call that a special feature?
Yep.
Okay.
Special feature movie.
Yeah.
It's like, really? Thank you.
Special feature, you can choose the scene you want to jump to.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Whee!
Oh.
But
yeah, so getting back to...
They had, I think, Germany had some episodes as well, and they had the German dub there. UK never got a DVD of the MYP. They had the World of He-Man special as a DVD release there,
yes,
which came in actually two formats. One was just a sort of like a slipcover of the DVD in a magazine, I think, and the other did have a proper, the basic see-through plastic case. But
did it come with toys over there like it did with ours? That's how we got World of He-Man, was it came with the figures.
I think they were more like some magazine.
Okay.
Because the VHS in America, I think, that came with a toy figure or something. So
yeah, and that's all we got was the VHS.
And that on its own topic, as veering to there,
Yeah.
it came in a time where it had animation from the moral segments, but in America you didn't get to see those.
Not
in Finland, we did get them, but in America you had not seen the moral segment, so people at the time were ecstatic that, oh my god, there's completely new animation here.
Yes, there was.
Learning later on that no, they just, everything in that visually was reused from the first season materials. The narration basically is the new thing there, and it's a fun little special. I think they should have done more of those, but it's I think it was gearing up for the Snake Men in some part.
Oh, absolutely. It was just nice, not to get too far on that, but the World of He-Man, it was nice hearing the full intro, and I know we brought it up on the show before, so I won't dig that up again, but God, that gag of Trapjaw taking the shot at Adam got old. Probably right around this point is where you were just like, man, I'm sick of seeing this interrupted intro. Let him speak for once. Excuse me. But yeah, so back to the episode. Man, we went everywhere, as we always do. But yeah, it was actually, I liked the gag with Orko in the beginning here, with him making the statue too light when he's trying to help them lift it. Because like Jukka said about 20 minutes ago, before I got him sidetracked, it was nice because it showed Orko with a bit of like teenagerness, but he was still really powerful, because that was a heck of a spell he pulled off right there.
And I like that it leads to Man-at-Arms. Just, you hear Man-at-Arms really getting pissed for the first time.
Yeah.
Because of something Orko does. Like, on the old one, it was always just, Orko! And in this one, it's like, this sounded like my dad. This was like run and hide kind of angry, that I heard that out of him maybe like once or twice,
Right.
So, but anyway.
But then at the same time, it's funny because it's actually Man-at-Arms' fault, because Orko had it under control. He'd already gotten the ropes up there to grab the statue. And it wasn't until Man-at-Arms messed with him that everything went, haywire. So I blame Man-at-Arms.
So does Orko.
Jukka, any thoughts on the opening sequence here? I think Jukka may be in this
sip.
There he is.
It's a very basic start, and effective in having the character relations also there, in the true almost Filmation style, that where they stand, and the whole Orko knocking accidentally all the statues. I mean, that's weeks and weeks of
Yeah.
the master's time, like putting them back up, and it's but very quickly you have the where everything like the I'm trying to think of a very fancy word in inciting the element, but you have Orko going to Grayskull soon after, but also learning that the villains were watching all this time, and they have their own reactions, and that adds its own comedy to it, that they just seem to have this time on their hands to look at what's going on in the palace in broad daylight. I mean, the Doomseekers were an interesting notion to everything, because I mean, in the old cartoon, Skeletor could easily watch with his view globe screen anything that was happening basically anywhere, but here they like go more on the techie side of things, and I would have liked more magical elements, but it serves its purpose.
Yeah, and to play the devil's advocate, it gives the reason, like, well, if Skeletor can see everywhere, how has he never stumbled upon Adam transforming or anything like that? It gives
Power of Grayskull.
Well, yes. You can use the power of Grayskull to explain that, and I have before. Like I said, I'm playing the advocate, but it was interesting to make it more of a technological thing where you have it turned the wrong way at the wrong time. I will say at some points I'm like, okay, there's a little too many Doomseekers running around. But here it worked. And it actually reminded me just of the Rainbow Warrior that we just did, where Beastman and Trapjaw were sitting there watching the joust, in Filmation. And this is kind of the same thing. They're like, oh, look at these guys try and do this, and the jester messes it all up, So it's a fun scene. I like it to this day.
No, I like the Skeletor's like, maybe I should get Orko to do something, because he apparently is better at doing damage than any of my minions, basically, at this point, which I like.
Yeah, and that was nice seeing Skeletor come into the throne room and being angry with them for slouching around, all day, just watching the masters rebuild the palace. Like, come on, guys, we got better things to do. Takes all his anger out on Triclops. I will say, it's one thing I liked about Skeletor in this series. He really got angry, and he lashed out, and that was always fun to see. And it gave him a bit of a vulnerability to me, because he's, so quick to anger and so quick to lash out that he misses some obvious stuff, like in The Courage of Adam, when he sends Beastman to track down He-Man, and he comes back with Prince Adam's gauntlet, and Skeletor just gets ticked off at Beastman and doesn't even stop to think for a minute. It's moments like that giving your villains that flaw is nice. It gives them a little more depth as a character.
Yeah.
But then we lead into Skeletor's plan here, and it's basically to go to the ruins of Zalesia and find this ancient artifact called the Ramstone that can break down any barrier, break into anything, I lost my train of thought completely. And, Evil Lynn's a little bit hesitant to go. She thinks it's pretty much just a rumor, an old story, and Skeletor insists that they need to go get it for him. So, and I also like that Skeletor is not going to go himself. And Evil Lynn even says that there's an ancient wizard there guarding it, or guarding the ruins. So, she's hesitant to go. Skeletor orders him to go anywhere anyway. So, Beastman, Trapjaw, and Evil Lynn head out. That's what I was gonna say. And thanks to the sequence at the end of the Deep End, this is the first moment, his first plot in the show where Skeletor's deciding how to get into Grayskull. He's shifted now. Instead of the Royal Palace, he's deciding that he's got to get into Grayskull because he finally knows about the power there. So, like I said, it's nice to see the continuation of that story.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that also sets this episode apart. It's the first one where sort of with status quo of things that you would think from a He-Man episode, that Skeletor's after Grayskull and good guys will have to stop him at some point.
Right.
I mean, I'm going back on I did a whole video about analyzing the introduction where I talked about how there we don't even really see Grayskull as a element that the bad guys would be all about. They attack the palace. So here in Lessons, it shifts more to the status quo of things, that this is what Skeletor wants. He knows that is the thing. And we just are on this wacky adventure that what is the new villain or vehicle or gadget that will help him achieve that. So it's I'll probably get back on it at some point later in the recording, but I feel Lessons might be the best episode, even better than Power of Grayskull. I have my reasons for it, and hopefully one day I'd get a video done, but I may give you guys the same cliff notes that I've tried to rack up my theory.
I definitely say right off the bat, yes, this episode is definitely about Powers of Grayskull, or Power of Grayskull, I'm sorry. Me and Shawn, we did that one already. And we actually rated it a little lower than we thought we were going to initially. But yeah, so for all you listeners, we won't get back into that here, but go check out our previous episode where we covered Power of Grayskull. And we'll get to the ratings at the end, obviously. But yeah, so now we're heading to Zalesia, which if I should have looked at it to make sure, but this is a completely new location, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, Zalesia is a new invention.
Yep. So it's this ancient city that they're headed to, these ruins, and luckily Mechanic just happens to be near there. It is located in the Sands of Time, which was a nice callback to the Filmation locations. And that was nice about this whole series. It's like you can tell they started with a map of, the Filmation, the classic stuff, and then they added a few spots here and there. But for the most part, the geography of Eternia is pretty much what we're used to from the 80s on. And so they're heading there. Luckily, Mechanec's scouting there, and he spies the evil warriors. He phones in the Man-at-Arms, and so Man-at-Arms and Adam head out to Zalesia to intercept, conveniently. But it's a kid's show, so
sure
it works.
Yeah.
And when we get to Zalesia, then they're trying to find a way in. Luckily, Evil Lyn just conveniently happens to know a spell that allows them to enter the ruins, raise it up. It's got a nice ram skull motif to the whole place. And a little tidbit, if I'm recalling correctly, and Jukka will yell at me if I'm wrong, but Larry DiTilio did write this episode, and I thought he had requested for Shakoti's temple to actually appear near the ruins of Zalesia in the desert, if I recall correctly.
The Shakoti stuff that I'm aware of is more for the Out of the Past. He wanted, when Skeletor is torturing Evil Lyn, he wanted there to be the Shakoti monster to be, or some nod to the dimension that was in the Shakoti episode. Lessons was his first episode that he was given when he came on to write, so Haven't heard any Shakoti mentions there, so he just did a awesome episode on its own.
All right, maybe I'm misremembering then. I do remember the Out of the Past stuff too. I knew that one for sure. But yeah, so we're to this occasion.
It could be that there might be something, and I'm not saying that. I just personally haven't found it, because I mean, in the episode there are elements that are in the script that you can read, and that they were cut probably because of time. I mean, Clawful appears at Grayskull, and they have a whole skirmish, and there's storyboard scenes where he's like banged up at the very last shot, but the final animated version doesn't show it, and there are little bits and pieces like that, but
sure,
haven't seen Shakoti mentioned there, so that's mostly my go-to at times to check the script, because luckily the DVDs came with PDF versions of those that were from BCI release.
Yes, and that might be where I got it from. I'll have to go back and check that myself. But regardless, so we get to Zalesia. Evelyn finds a way in for them, luckily. And Adam and Man-at-Arms are just kind of watching when they get there. And then we get the interaction in the temple where the Faceless One finally first appears. And just like he says, just this kind of glowing specter with no face. And that's about all we know about him at this point. And he beats Trapjaw and Beastman pretty single-handedly. And then Evelyn appears, and he's stunned by her. He's, you and all this, and that she's able to use that to get the drop on him. And I know when I first watched this, I'm assuming that I went with that he was her mentor. He was the one who taught her, and she probably betrayed him. That's where I was going on first viewing. Shawn or Jukka, any thoughts on the Faceless One when he first appeared for you guys?
For me, I figured it was along the same lines as what you're saying, that I knew there was a connection somewhere.
Right.
I didn't read the comic at that point. I was just watching the show and then getting back into some of that stuff as I went along. So yeah, I like that they had that element, because you knew Evelyn wasn't interested in doing this.
Right.
And then you see why, and then it's like, I like that. I like that they're showing there's histories to these characters before they do some of these missions and stuff like that. And then when we get to the end and see what that actually means, it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. So not to go all the way there, but yeah, it definitely puts some interesting twists and turns into characters in that way for me.
In my case, I was sorta watching the episode through the forums with people just reading the reactions, and then at very, very lagging with whomever had the technology, mostly John Callis, but also Tallstar had capabilities of getting images from TV and posting them online. So the information got to me first before that there's a new character, and seeing a visual, but I was just too excited that there's a completely new character that I didn't really think about it at the time. And then the comments are like, by the end, revealing what the deal was. So when I actually first saw the proper episode, I sort of knew what to expect, but didn't lessen the experience at all.
No, it still holds up watching it today. And yeah, it's nice to see new characters once in a while. It's definitely nice for them to just go a completely new character here and there, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel all the time. So,
and in a way, one of the highlights, what sets this episode apart, we get a proper first completely new character who has a very big impact on the mythos of Eternia and its characters. So
Exactly. And so she blasts the faceless one through quite a few walls, and takes the Ramstone and heads to meet Skeletor at Grayskull. One of the shots I love from this episode is we get to see what Adam's transformation looks like from far away, and that there is actually, because that's been a debate among here and there, like is the transformation just a show for us? Is there any actual thing like in universe that people see? And this definitely answered that yes, there is at least something, because as they're entering the ruins there, they see that blast from the sky of power and a little bit of swirliness, if I recall correctly. And I like that. I like that there is some sort of in-universe transformation going on. It's just not Adam being replaced by He-Man. But of course, it's not. It's also not quite the whole effect and Grayskull backdrop and everything that we get to see for show.
and it's another first for this episode. We get a glimpse of that. The more dramatic one would be then with the last stand right in front of Skeletor.
Yep.
But yeah, it's those elements that, because up until that point it was mostly symbolic and reusing the same footage. Though another thing on the deep end right before that, they had one interesting thing where they finally changed the background color on Battle Cat when he's transforming. They had it yellow instead of the purple one, which actually more suits the time that in that episode the transformation was taking apart. And that's like, because the purple one actually gets very boring very fast.
Yeah.
So I was very happy to see that they would change it up even little by little.
Yeah.
And it's they would do those changes. And the another video topic I've done, the introduction also changed at least 6 times with small changes the more episodes came on Cartoon Network. So they were constantly trying to get better and evolving with the show. So that's why sometimes it was a bit disappointing when the faces would be off model or whatever. But luckily not in this episode. And as all of that happening has going on with Evelyn and He-Man and whatnot, we've had Orko as the B plot going up to Sorceress at Grayskull, and we also see that there are some security magical elements that it's not so easy to just waltz into Grayskull, and more like illusions coming up and you don't know where you're going, and the Escher-esque painting of the corridors and all that. It's really fantastic stuff, learning more about it, and Orko just trying to wander in and bumping into the sorceress, and she's very calm and very elegant in a golden yellow, the magical sphere just floating about, and asking just very calmly, like, why do you want to go back to Trolla? And he gives the same basic information from Filmation that we had for older fans, that he powers work differently, and he was called Orko the Great, and she's like, oh, go to the library for a bit, and the spell will take some time. And it was such a big deal that she acted in this more understanding and nurturing way, because that is what all the media basically has given us that she is. She is the guardian of Castle Grayskull, but she does help all the heroes, be it someone like Many-Faces or Orko when they need, or He-Man giving advice and understanding, and the MYP had their own take on it, which luckily did the strictness or the coldness, whatever term you want to use, it got lesser by season 2. Mostly some of the episode events needed her to be an actual proper guide to the heroes, telling Man-at-Arms or Adam some history. So I'm glad it went that way. And in this episode, it shines through the most, and mostly because of Larry's great writing. And so Orko goes to the humongous library in Castle Grayskull that we didn't know existed up until now, and he meets up with this. Meets up a stranger there and talks a bit about going to Backtrolla, and he brings up the book of yesterday and shows the flashback images of Orko arriving on Eternia. Again, going for the Filmation fans, it's like a very good nostalgic thing that they kept that. I mean, obviously the MYP people, there are some who, like from Ian Richter, producer, and all these guys who grew up with He-Man, and they had James Eatock write a whole Filmation sort of Bible for them, and they used that as some basis, so you will have those Sands of Time references and other things pop up. And but this really brings it all together that, yes, even the Orko origin is basically the same. Like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel or anything. And we have a young Prince Adam, though no Cringer there, like in the...
Cringer was there.
Am I misremembering that?
You sure?
Because he's splashing around.
I could have sworn
he's holding him in Filmation.
Did I really do that just in my mind?
He holds him in Filmation, but when I was watching it today, I thought the same thing, that, Adam's there, but, there's no Cringer at that moment, if I remember correctly, too.
I just inserted him then. And it's because it's almost a play-by-play recreation of the Filmation origin. Swamp Hoppers are menacing here, but I mean, all right.
They did change that in Larry's script. He also even has Orko with a holding medallions and speaking in some magical words and incantations and all that. But for the final episode, they had the wand for him.
Yes, the wand. Mm-hmm.
And that gets thrown from his hand, and even after he did manages to save young Prince Adam, and it's the responsibility of this stranger person there next to Orko just like bring up that you did a good thing. And it's not as powerful as in the Filmation, where the sorcerer really hones it in that without you there would be no He-Man. Like, you are very important for the entire mythos of Eternia and everything. Absolutely. But here we have the stranger talk about it, and they go for another flashback where it's just King and Queen sulking on something that was never really information given, and Orko turns the young prince into a flower in a pot, and that gives them the gift of laughter, as is said. The one thing about that scene is that I remember fans made some cool fan theories about it, even if that didn't really pan out, but they had the idea that maybe the king and queen were thinking about Adora, that she was lost to them,
That's what I was gonna say.
And maybe
Mhm.
they're sad about that, and as fan theories go, that's one of the really good ones. But yeah, they later did. The creators say that no, that there's no reason. Then we didn't think of anything here, and or not make any nods to anything. So
But
Hmm.
a shame.
still to this day, fans speculate on that scene, and yeah, I agree. This whole thing is just it's nice. It was nice getting confirmation of everything here. You know, leading up to here, like most of your backstory that you're used to is intact, and it was nice. It was a good scene. And I will say, I just pulled it up again, and that is definitely a baby cringer there. I don't care what you guys are saying. I don't even know if my phone can pick that up. But he is definitely
Okay.
holding.
I
You are
didn't
correct.
remember.
I remember
I didn't remember
mostly the
correctly.
scene where he's splashing around and there's no creature there, so
Okay,
no
so
no
we're
prize goes
not
to you.
we're not crazy here, or I'm not crazy here. Um, I actually want to watch that a second farther. I wonder if Cringer disappears there. But yeah, no, it was nice seeing mostly the same thing. It's interesting here because instead of just being on Eternia for Orko's magic acting weird, they place it more on the wand um, as being the reason why he can't work right on Eternia. So it's a little thing, but it's interesting that they did that slightly different here. And I know MVC would later bring his wand back. Uh, Unfortunately, we never got to see anything past that, but it was a neat element here.
And if you have the DVD version of episode 3, the wand shows up there even though it's out of continuity,
Yes.
and in the Cartoon Network version it is not there as it should be.
Yeah, that was one of the most confusing edits. I know they went back and changed a few things here and there, but when they did that one, because like you said in the original airing, that wasn't there, and then they added it, it's like, why? Why would you do that? And even here, I know they added some different effects here and there between the broadcast and the DVD version.
Yeah, I think I've posted some of those back in the day.
Yeah,
It's
you guys can go
it's
find that stuff.
it's one of those um, maybe most easily, like, visually something that you can notice that, hey, something is different here. They removed an effect here, or they made it different there, and background paintings are changed, some actually for better continuity, and
But
it
yeah,
makes a very fun comparison. I showed those during, I think, 2012 at
mm-hmm.
the German Grayskull convention when I had a 2000X panel there. So,
Nice.
but yeah, it's one of those reasons why the Cartoon Network versions would be so great to have
Mm-hmm.
somewhere, like, in good quality, but sadly I don't have those. If anyone
No.
listeners have them on VHS or something and can digitize them, please help.
Yeah. No, it would be nice to get the original airings out. Um, Shawn, why don't you take us for a little bit here? So we're leaving Grayskull now, and we're heading back to
One
the
quick
Ape.
note here,
Oh,
if I can
yeah, go ahead.
interject, as the way that the stranger leaves
Oh yes,
when there's the in info, or the
mm-hmm.
uh,
the
evil lurking
the
nearby
evil
the
is
castle,
approaching. Yep.
the um, way that the stranger disappears has similar effects used that Evil Lyn did at the Faceless Ones
Mm-hmm.
temple,
Hmm.
which I think, not sure if it was intentional or anything, but it's like, well, two sorceresses and the way they do magic, if there is some consistency there.
And yeah, that's an interesting point. I never thought about that. Kind of, they good magic and evil magic, but they both kind of draw from the same spell casting. I don't know. I always thought that sound effect when the stranger disappears was very much like wings flapping, almost. But that's just me, maybe. So Shawn, take it away. What do we got? What's this evil approaching?
Oh boy, see, I'm a jumble now because we've gone down so many rabbit holes. I'm like, okay, what part are we on now? Yeah. So basically, yeah, evil is shown up. It's Skeletor, and he has the Ram Stone, and oh, okay. I'm piloting it all on my own here with Jukka. Okay. So yeah, Skeletor shows up with the Ram Stone, and if I remember correctly, because now it's all a jumble in my head, Orko finds out through the sorceress that he's out there, and she needs his help to distract him while He-Man is trying to get to Grayskull. She's letting him know, hey, we have a problem, and she knows he has the Ram Stone, and he's going to use it to try to get into Grayskull, and pretty much Orko is like, I don't know if I can do this. He doesn't feel up to it. The whole magic wand not being a part of it. And
it's after the first He-Man tries to stop Skeletor, and we first time see what the effects on the Ramstone are. And
you should have let Jukka take it away.
I feel bad for you. You've been so quiet in the corner over there.
Hey, I'm just listening to this is like my Roger Sweet episode of the Council. I just sat there because at this point I'm listening to the heavy hitters, and I'm just here. I'm good. So because now I completely food-barred that. So go for it. Feel free. Oh.
Go ahead, Jukka, because I'm not sure where we're at. They're attacking Grayskull?
Obviously, I don't know.
Yeah, Orko comes up to Sorceress and learns that Skeletor's at the door, and after He-Man tries to intervene and gets actually first Battle Cat knocked out, and
yes, another classic moment, defining aspect of 2000X.
Yeah.
This one's. The way it's drawn here is just so great. I mean, you can see Battle Cat plummets to the ground, and just the way he's lying there, the lines in his face, like he just looks in pain and knocked out at the same time, and just the look on He-Man's face, it's just drawn so greatly here.
Mm-hmm.
It's effective way to bring about what He-Man actually cares most, and it's you don't need to like fabricate a reason why he might be pissed off with Skeletor, and that is also when Skeletor properly tells why this barrier thing works the way it does, that you've always been a barrier to me, so let's try this doohickey on you and see what happens. And
that's a great line.
And it's the first shocking moment also in the series that it knocks He-Man back out. Sorceress tried to warn him and reverts back to Adam because of the whole thing. And that's when she turns to Orko that, well, she needs to go to help Adam, and you need to distract Skeletor. He's already at the gate, so good luck.
I skipped all over that part. Now I feel like a complete idiot.
You're good. But I know you want to talk about that moment because we talked about this.
I do, and it bugs me that I completely threw that out the window and went to the next part because, like I said, my mind is like I'm trying to keep up with everything. I'm like I can't remember where that part was exactly. But no, that moment for me is awesome because it showed the difference really easily with Filmation versus 2000X, because Adam always had a little more. He might have been, like a more carefree Adam, but there was a little more maturity to that Adam, whether you like it or not. And in this one, when it is, this moment, like, he sees what happens. And it's the whole, I'm going to get him finally. And I love that whole idea of Sorceress. No, He-Man, don't do it. And he does it. And you can see there's just like vengeance in his eyes when he's going for that moment. And like Jukka said, okay, boom, the power of Grayskull is gone because he goes head to head with this ancient artifact. And it was such a powerful moment to see that, because as a kid, I always thought, why don't they do that? Like, I actually had a couple moments when I was a kid going like, he's a magical construct. How come they can't interfere that tether to Grayskull that he has, that he would turn into Adam or something? And once they opened up that door on here, now every time they have any kind of mystical anything or an ancient artifact, 9 out of 10 times I go, I wonder if it's going to make He-Man turn into Adam again, because that was cool. Because it was. Yeah. It was just like such a shocking moment. That's how powerful this artifact is.
Yeah, and it was, like you said, it was awesome for the first time. See, because I never even thought about that. Growing up, like, I never thought about there being something so powerful that it could knock the He-Man out of someone. Like,
I'm going to knock the He-Man out of you.
It never even occurred to me. It's like, well, once he transformed, you could interrupt the transformation, obviously, by, rocks falling in on him, whatever. But it's like, once he was He-Man, he was He-Man. Even in Secret of the Sword, Hordak drained all his strength. He was still He-Man. He needed to power back up, but never getting knocked back. So, and sorry, that distracted me. Even with the, oh God, what am I saying? I sound like an idiot.
We can edit this.
I don't, though. I'm very lazy. I don't mind sounding like an idiot. You can send me a bunch of pictures, and it distracted me.
Pretty pictures.
Me and my buddies, that's where I was going. Me and my buddies always used to gather on whatever day this aired on Cartoon Network, and we'd always watch the new episodes together. And we're all just sitting there, and when that happens, we are all just like, oh my God, like, he's out, and he's at him. And then we're like, well, did Skeletor see him? Or what, did he fall back, quick enough or whatever? And luckily, of course, he was knocked back so quick that Skeletor didn't notice. But yeah, so we're like, Battle Cat's knocked out, Adam's knocked out, Skeletor's got he brings the drawbridge down, And that's one quick note. I still hate that they changed the jawbridge to a drawbridge. The drawbridge really lended a lot to Castle Grayskull, in my opinion. That was one of the coolest aspects of it. It's like, man, this doesn't even have a normal door. It's got a giant mouth that comes down with all these teeth and everything. So
yeah.
And now I'm gonna look at Yuka's pretty pictures that he sent me. Oh, it's the comparisons. He sent me the comparisons here. Let me see if I can. Go ahead, Yuka. Keep going, and I'm going to see if I can do something right quick. But take us on with the story here.
Yeah, so it's Sorceress goes to help Adam, who luckily still has the sword nearby when he flew into the horizon, basically. And in the animation, I mean, there's like a rock that gets split. So not sure if it was meant to convey that he flew right through it or something, and because that would be kind of brutal. I mean, already getting knocked the magic out of him, but also like going through some rocks. It's and Orko is at the gate, very bravely confronting Skeletor and just baiting him with like I have this magical Grayskull pot, so I can easily defeat you. And Skeletor's not having it, but Orko manages to swap them out and gets the Ramstone and quickly goes back in Grayskull, which is sort of like don't do that. Don't lead the villain into the place, but
Yeah.
Skeletor gets a face full of the all the Grayskull's own magical elements, and actually doesn't get too far, and Orko's like coming back to the bridge where Evelyn steps out of the shadows in a pretty neat animation and knocks him out. So Orko thinks that the Ramstone is fallen to the abyss, but Evelyn goes after it and uses her magic to get a helping hand from the stone structure.
I like that hand. I like that hand spell. That was neat. Even watching it today, I'm like, that's a neat spell there.
Another moment that is later reanimated to have a more painted version. The Cartoon Network one had cel shaded, not the best term, but just flat tones and the line art. So they changed that for, I think, European version, technically for possible DVD release. I noticed these changes when the European versions were coming out, but they kept making those changes, and when it finally came on DVD, that's the version that we got. So
so run us through right quick here. I hope you can see that. I threw up it's the Castle Grayskull right now. Which ones? Well, never mind. Cartoon Network's there. So so Cartoon Network
He-Man
had
confronting
a weird shot.
Skeletor, and the Cartoon Network is basically almost a stock background of Grayskull that they slapped in many occasions, depending whatever the perspective actually was, but they would use that many times. But in a later version for DVD, they did remake the whole background, so it is a proper side view.
Right. Which besides those two turrets being too close together, that is actually a good improvement. This one I remember.
Yep. My kids are coming down. I'll be right back.
Sure, go ahead. This one I remember. This one is they added or they took away the sparkle effects. That's what it was when Battle Cat's being healed. Which is
not sure why they
choice.
did that. Yeah. So are we getting ahead of the episode?
Well, we are, but you know what?
And here the later version has a brighter color that sort of washes over He-Man, and the direction of the shadow is changed. I think background otherwise is basically the same, but those are one of the visually interesting ones. There are a lot more with when He-Man and Skeletor confront with the Ramstone magical creature. They switched around how they were placed near it, and that. I hope to one day make a proper video or slideshow or something where I can show all the differences. But there's some background images and perspective shots where they changed it.
Yeah, mostly for the better. A few are a little odd choices, but yeah, that's what Jukka was sending me when I sounded like an idiot earlier. So I figured we'd throw them up there and talk about them for a second. So, and then this basically takes us to our wrap up. I tell you what, the Orko switcheroo in this episode was a lot better than in the Search, where he's got a rubber bouncy ball. I'll give it that. He's here again. He when he needs to, he's got a spell. It works, and it was a nice way to get the Ramstone away from Skeletor. I liked that. I liked it in here. Go ahead, Shawn.
No, I was just agreeing. I liked it a lot, and 2000X they had their silly moments with them, but I was always appreciative that they didn't. It wasn't as childlike as Filmation at times for me, and I know Filmation it teeters from one to the other as well, like we said earlier. But he is a reliable part of the heroes more on this, especially the other one that I loved was Last Stand, for the simple fact, if it wasn't for him, that would have been it, and again, it's the same deal. Here he is, and it seems like his best moments happen when he's at Grayskull and he's doing these little moments.
When the chips are down, that's how I've always viewed Orko. It's like, you know what? He may be a screw up most of the time, but when it really matters, he'll get that spell right every time.
Well, and the other thing about that moment for him that I loved when the drawbridge. Well, when the bridge, the drawbridge, not the jawbridge, but when that comes down and he does the switcheroo, I love the fact that when he gets it, Skeletor's like, the Ramstone. He's like, yeah, and I'm gonna blast you with it. I love that. It's like, holy crap, Orko's gonna like. It's like gang style, almost the way that he said that. I was like, it was surprising to hear it out of him, but at the same time, it's like, that shows how bad the chips are down here, that Orko is going to have to be violent to Skeletor because he's just about to cross the threshold.
Unfortunately, Orko couldn't.
But Orko's only heard the magical words "Vir Batok Atra" only once, so he doesn't know how to say it.
Yeah, and I did like that quite a lot too, because even I, listening to Skeletor do it, I'm like, I don't think I could repeat that. And then when he tries, I'm like, I'm in the same boat, buddy. If I would have gotten it, that would have been all she wrote too. So.
I actually was practicing that while when Skeletor was saying it while I was watching the episode. I'm like, I'm gonna say this like 3 times each time so that I remember how to say it, and I got nothing right now. It's bear. I know you could, and you could just said it. And I still bear Barak Atram.
Vir Batok Atra.
Yeah, that would have been just like Orko. It would have
been you and I would have been like that. And I would have been like Beast Man on the Anwat Gar episode, where it's like you throw the Legacy Stone up and it just hit me in the head because I couldn't remember that little rhyme they do. Yeah. So go figure. I know by the power of Grayskull, I got that going for me.
Right. So go ahead, Jukka. Finish off this episode here. You've been doing such a good job. We'll just sit back and watch.
Well, they get to one of the best parts of it. Evelyn gets the Ramstone back, and she does the reveal of the things I do for family, and everyone collectively gasps at their TV screens at that point.
Yep.
That holy crap, it's her dad, and like, what's the story there? And we wouldn't really learn about it until much, much, much later, and not all even in the cartoon. So,
nope.
Adam gets back on his feet thanks to the sorceress in Zoar form helping him. So, and he is this time ready for Skeletor, who's on the drawbridge, and we get their first proper encounter against each other in a real clash of titans on the bridge of Grayskull. I mean, like, the moments you have on the show that are just very epic and memorable. This episode has so many firsts that I'm just always shocked when people make lists or ask on Facebook or whatever, like, hey, what do you think is the best episode? And they go like, oh, I like the Power of Grayskull with we learned about the ancestor. Like, boring. It's like it's Lessons. Lessons is much better episode than Power of Grayskull. It has much more mythology building, new character, new reveals, and setting up the basic tone of how everything works, even if it's very much Filmation based. He-Man and Skeletor going at each other, and like, then He-Man obviously punches him away, and then they flee, and emotional scenes with Battlecat getting injured, but luckily Sorceress helps recover him, and just it has everything.
Yep.
It's
Yeah, and then with Orko, he's Sorcerer going, well, the spell's ready for you to go back to Tralla, and He-Man's like, Tralla, you're gonna leave us, and Orko has realized his place here, and that hits home too. It's like he realizes through the old man, which was revealed to be the sorceress. We kind of skimmed over that part, but after he teleports out of the library, you see him walking up to the big mirror of the eye that sorceress uses in this series. And the cloak falls away, and it is a sorceress. But yeah, he realizes, like I am important. I do have a role to play. I'm not just a screw up, and it was well written. It was a good reveal. It was a good moment for him.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with everything Yuka's saying. That's why this episode stands up. Not only does it tell you that what you remember is still valid, but it honors it and enhances it, and this is what all reboots should do.
Yeah. Well, you and I brought it up before, and with Yuka on the show today, like it would have been interesting if Larry DiTillio could have been the one to start the series, and like do the beginning episodes and add that flavor, because as much as those got the ball rolling for the series, I felt like his touches of how he dealt with the characters here would have played even better than the original version of the beginning, possibly. And I think there would have probably been a little bit more of that world, the ancientness, like we like about this one, the ancientness about some of this going into here's Skeletor getting these artifacts, and now it's bringing world building into play a little bit more. So I mean, I know we have what we have, and it was still cool to have a beginning episode instead of how Filmation, where every episode you started out with, here's my introduction, here's my bio card, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
But I like the idea that, when I think about it, it's like Larry DiTillio, even for a new series, kind of had his fingers on the pulse of this is how you could do it, that the old fans will still love it, obviously, in the case of everyone here at this point. But, starting the ball rolling as well, that would have been it would have been one where I think nobody would say those 3 episodes were not good. It would just be like, no, Larry DiTillio, yeah, that's great. Like keep them going, at this point. So, it's yet another, another good reason of why he was such a powerhouse in like our childhoods, and all that's his talent was formidable in making us excited and believe in this stuff.
And honestly, it could possibly be what he, even what he wanted to do back in the 80s, because I know a lot of times in his interviews and stuff, he said, I had to like dial this back or dial that back, or, Filmation wasn't comfortable going there, so it might have been more freeing for him too. I don't know.
I always go to the what ifs, but that's just one of those. Out of everything I can what if, that one would be. I would have loved before he passed away to sit down and go, okay, you get the okay to do this series. And granted, I know everyone else was a part of it. I'm not trying to diminish their roles. But if you could have started this yourself and said, okay, you're going to write the first 3 episodes, how would you have wanted to do it to maybe make it even more rich than what it was? Or what would you have done differently that maybe would have made the fans even more excited for it or something?
Yeah, that would have been a great question.
Because he really does do quite a lot of episodes that really stick out in a lot of people's minds in the fandom and stuff.
Absolutely. So. But Yuka, have you ever had a chance to interview Larry? I know you did a lot of them here and there.
Sadly not. In my case, well, the whole getting to interview the Finnish dubbing team back in the day, it was a pretty shot in the dark. I had discovered their information and went to their studio, and I took pictures there and had information of the names of the people who worked on it and posted them on my site. And it sort of got me on this path where later, years and years later, when Facebook became much bigger than it originally was, and people got there on their actual names, like
Yeah.
and not under aliases, and you could find photos and you could actually match that, hey, this name in this date and this country, they might actually be this person who created this old episode for He-Man, or even this new episode. And it's because those the way I was handling them, it was just I had no real connections. Basically,
Right.
I just so Facebook is something I have much to thank in that regard, that I could discover people like Michael Donovan and Brian Dobson, and they had wonderful information, and they would also sometimes mention that, hey, if you really want to know about this and this, then you should talk to this and this guy. And then I'd be like, well, I can find 5 people with that name on Facebook. Which one of them is it? so that was also one of those that just really wanted to find as much information as possible, because in the early times when the series had basically ended, I mean, we did get some Q&A on the org that while it was still going on. I think one of the first ones maybe was from the toy side, Jeremy Padawer.
Yeah.
So he had some, and people were interested in all the toys and like what's coming up next, and will we get to see this character as a figure, or are these vehicles, or what is Snake Mountain coming? And so, but later we also got there was Dean Stefan had, I think, 3 Q&As, and then Ian Richter, who was producer from Mattel's side, and those 2 were the main big ones. And I later got a short interview with Gary Hartle, which rounds up the trio of MYP, basically, that I've learned since that, and also on the DVD, director, what commentaries, what have you. It's evident that those 3 were behind everything. Maybe Dean Stefan and Ian Richter had more cohesiveness between them two, where they would discuss ideas and come up with things, but Gary would also pitch in something. But there are some instances where all 3 would have very different ideas, and something like She-Ra in 2002 cartoon, the biggest fan myth that she was gonna be in season 3 episode 1 is just sadly not true, because there are very contradicting statements that we can still find online, and none of them really support that theory. And well, that mostly stems from the information that yes, Evil Horde was coming up and they were gonna be in that season, and people just automatically go that, oh, we were gonna get Hordak and She-Ra there, and it's like, partially right.
Sure, we could do a whole episode just on those interviews and everything, all that stuff that various guys have leaked after the fact. And I'm gonna have Yuka, make sure you send me links to some of your stuff here that you've mentioned. I'm gonna drop it all down below. Drop a link to your channel, to Yuka, all that stuff. So, guys, after you're done with watching this episode, go check out all of Yuka's stuff, because he's got a lot of amazing, informative stuff there.
Definitely. He did the one about the transformation sequences that I enjoyed watching recently too, between Filmation versus 2000X, which it's I like that one quite a lot, because for me, not being the biggest fan of the 2000X transformation, it succinctly helped you go, this is probably why it works for you to see the Filmation, or this is why it works for you to see the 2000X, depending what you're
go into that at some point. I am still holding a torch that because James Eatock at one point some years ago said that he would make a video where he would basically dissect the Filmation transformation, and I just love to hear him talk about every single flash of light from red to blue or whatever that happens on and in the background, and which moire effect was used somewhere, or but yeah, I did the introduction theme analysis where I compared the season 1 of Filmation He-Man and then the
Yeah. Yeah. Always.
information, and that all the information that I did dig up for the 2002 in Finland at the time, and showing my fan art and color that progressed slowly but steadily is what led to Val Staples asking me in 2008 help with at the time what they thought that would be the last time that MV Creations would, or the people there would have anything to do with He-Man, was the pack-in mini comic for the DVD that was episode 40 on the MYP adapted.
I didn't realize you worked
and
on that.
I had some pages where I did background colors.
Nice.
While Val would concentrate on the actual main characters and some special effects and all that. But I had a small hand in there, and I thought for many years that, well, I got to be 2000X voice in Finland, and I had a hand in coloring some background art in a mini comic. So
yeah, that's amazing.
This would be fun. But later then came the Dark Horse books, and
we'll get into
big
those
shot there
in just a second here. I'm going to wrap up with that. Real quick, though, we got to give ratings here. So, Jukka, lessons. We do it out of a scale of 10, so...
100.
I had a feeling you
That's our first hunt. Actually, you went overboard on one, didn't you?
No, I did. I gave 110 out so far. A perfect
Rainbow
score.
Warrior.
Huh?
Rainbow Warrior, wasn't it? You did a 10, I think on that one.
I think it was Rainbow Warrior, yes.
Okay.
And
so we got our first 100, though.
That's our first 100. I'm gonna go. This is gonna be my second 10. Like, rewatching it today, it holds up. It's got great plot. It doesn't drag. The characters are who we know they are, and it's just a great story. Greatly written. The animation is astounding. That whole battle at the end there. I like how they were able to get physical in this show. You've got Skeletor just grabbing Orko off the drawbridge and just holding him up there and just about to pummel him. And then He-Man comes in and grabs the arm and everything. It's like top notch. 10 out of 10 all the way.
Well, I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to give it a 9. And the only reason I'm going to do 9 is because I know what's coming down the pike. And there's certain things I love about that stuff as well, that it elevated it from what Filmation started the ball rolling with to some of the action we get out of 2000X, because that was a huge thing in 2000X. I loved was you could get some action in this that you never got before out of a He-Man cartoon. But yeah, this one I almost want to say 9.5 to be honest, because it really does it really does a great job of giving you so much in one episode of a lot of the things that would make anyone who loved Filmation but didn't try this show. This is the one you could probably go try that episode
And on one note about some deleted scenes material that can be found on the script itself, when He-Man confronts Skeletor at Grayskull as he is about to use the Ramstone, originally there was a whole group of evil warriors there. You had Evil Lyn show up there, and there was Whiplash, Triclops, and even Clawful. And it had a point where Evil Lyn first goes into the shadows, and Sorceress doesn't even notice it when she looks outside and notice that there's like all the evil guys coming up. And so when later in the actual episode she just appears out of nowhere from the shadows, it's sort of looking back on that. And there was before the first blast from the Ramstone that hit Battle Cat, He-Man was dealing with basically the goons, Triclops, Whiplash, and Clawful, and like deflecting beams and throwing them at trees and stuff. So what you, Matthew, just said there about that, it's a great episode because it doesn't miss a beat.
No.
Like it's one of those that, and it's it would have been probably a cool action scene, but I'm sort of glad they cut it, mostly for time, I think. But it also it's really tightened episode where every scene actually leads the story forward, and that's something you don't always get in children's animation or even movies. So that's why I'm very much on the side that it's one of the, if not the best episode of the show.
Yeah, and actually, I think it works better, honestly. It would have been cool to see that fight scene, but I think it works better with this being his first assault on Grayskull. That comes down to He-Man versus Skeletor, basically. You got all your basics. Oh, that Evil Lyn scene would have helped explain why she just appeared there, because that's about the only weird little loose end. But she pulled the trick earlier in Zalesia, so you don't question it too much. I did want to say, I did forget one other moment that I just wanted to call out here, and that's the fact that we left Man-at-Arms dealing with Trapjaw and Beastman at Zalesia.
That's right.
And then at the end of the episode, when Skeletor's, ruing about his defeat at Snake Mountain, you see Trapjaw and Beastman all in bandages, and like Beastman's licking his wounds literally, and I like that little sight gag. It's like you didn't have to see the battle between them two, but Man-at-Arms totally whooped both of them.
And there's the whole bit where he says, like, I'll call for backup. No, you didn't.
No. Well, that's what, like I'm saying, when we get into the later stuff in the season. I mean, there's that sequence. I never thought I'd see the day that you had a sequence with Skeletor versus Man-at-Arms.
Yeah.
And we get that in 2000X, and when you see what Man-at-Arms pulls out of his, he just he's got stuff up his sleeve, up his other sleeve, up in his boots, whatever. It's like he's freaking Iron Man versus Thanos in that moment. And every time I get to that part, I'm just sitting there like, they let some characters that did not get that kind of cred have those moments on this show. But what you're saying about that action sequence, the thing that I actually like is the action sequence is contained to the guy that you want He-Man to fight the most in this, and Skeletor. And I like that this is our first. We got it in the beginning, but this is the first like legit feeling of this is what the series is going to be about from here out, especially with the drawbridge. It's like you have that. It's like it starts here.
Yeah.
It's got that feeling of okay. Anything else? That was the beginning of this story, but this is the moment where you got that, okay, now Grayskull is going to always be under attack because Skeletor has theories. He's got questions.
Exactly. Oh, great episode.
Well, going on that, it's a whole topic on its own. That the show really was Man at Arms and the Masters of the Universe, and there's also this He-Man fellow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
we've gone down that rabbit hole a couple times. Shawn prefers that He-Man's a WMD, but yeah.
I honestly don't prefer that. What I meant by that was this show. I hate to say it, but this show didn't give as much personality to He-Man versus how Filmation did for me. And so I always looked at it in that way, where he was viewed as he's our last resort. He's the WMD in this battle sequence or something. And usually he was, but anybody who does complain about it, I'm like, I can't fight you. There is this element of He-Man's a little more lacking, and it is like Man at Arms' leadership sometimes it's what takes over and all that, versus He-Man being the one kind of being in charge and stuff. But I can give or take it, to be honest, because the stories are so solid on this series for me that I'm like, it is what it is. It's a little different. So
Absolutely. So now that's kind of a wrap up. Jukka, why don't you tell us a little bit about your time working on the Dark Horse books there, and kind of what's coming up with them?
You get a extra hour.
Well, maybe the condensed version a little bit there, but you said you worked on 3 of them?
Yeah, I mean, when the art of He-Man came on, I mean, that was a very big deal and everyone was very excited about it. And then the news sort of broke, I think, through a website that sells books. They had the early solicitation information that, oh, there's a mini comic collection coming later down the year.
Yeah.
So, and that like took everyone by surprise, and it raised a lot of questions with people. They were talking about that. Well, will it have everything and all the mini comics, and what order will they be? Production or some story chronological, or and like. I kept seeing people make those comments on Facebook and forums and whatnot, and after a couple of days, I was sort of bold and crazy enough that I contacted the editor at Dark Horse. I had previously already talked with him when the art of He-Man was coming out. I had sent some 2000X cartoon images. I only had some low resolution images, and I said that these were by such and such artist, that if you guys can get some contact information for him and get maybe some good quality images, these might be interesting. There were some royal palace shots and ancient Grayskull images, but I forget if that went really anywhere, but I had already talked with him. So when the mini comic information came out that, oh, there's a book coming and all that, so I just sent them a note that, hey, will it be such and such, and will you include this, and did you know that there's like a 10-page version versus 13-page version of this mini comic, and just all these very fanboyish things. And they were very gracious in that. I mean, someone cold calling them, basically. And I mean, that's sort of frowned upon in some circles. You don't do that. You don't just go up to people. And so they were very nice enough about it, that I was just this fan, interested and giddy about the whole thing. And later, maybe 2 days, 3 days, Val Staples contacts me and he says that, I heard that you went and sent them email. I'm handling this project, so what suggestions did you have? What did you talk about? And then I was saying all the same stuff that, well, there's like so many different things, and are you guys gonna be doing this and this and this, and what about this and this and this? And he was like, yeah, everything's already, we've got it covered. We're like full ahead and restoring these, and we already have all the collections, and we don't need any more. And so I think later in some Skype discussion, couple weeks later, he was like, well, we already have all these now, and anything pop into your mind that should there be, is there any mini comics that we sort of missed out or something like that? And I was like, you have it all. I mean, they had the approach that anything that was packaged with a comic, with a toy,
Right.
that they would put those in. So that's why you sadly don't see something like the 2000X mini comic, which was with the Game Boy.
Yep. I had that one.
Yeah, but they could get some of the ones that were with the toys, and I remember at the time still being loving all the BCI DVDs that had come out in like 2005 to 2008, and in those, whenever there was like the chapter scene, you had the little trivia there.
Yeah.
That in this episode, this name stems from a famous singer, or here we have first time Orko showing his face without a hat, and which is all basically James Etock and I think on She-Ra, Alex Hawkey,
Yeah.
who went to help James write the animated guide. But that was like my approach, that, well, I really liked all the trivia and behind the scenes information on the DVDs so can you put something for the mini comics? Like, do you have anything to, like, it's one of those cases where I'm interested in that, hey, I'd love to learn more about this. Like, can you provide this? Like, why is this character such and such color in the mini comic, but the toy is different? And it's like I'm hoping someone would just give me the information that I want to know. But Val was then like, well, if you can put up some list of these things, that would be, and you can send it to me. I can try, and no promises or anything, because there's no sections for that. There's no extra pages where like we're booked on everything. And I spent like couple weeks on it, just going through all the mini comics and looking over things and taking notes, and had help from a couple German fans who are very knowledgeable about these things, and they got credited in the book as well. And I put together a list and sent it, and they said that, well, we can find a way to maybe it'll be in the gutters or somewhere. We'll think about it. My first idea was that maybe before every mini comic there would be a single blank page where all the information would be. So when I was like doing the first drafts on them, I never specified too much that which page or which panel something was happening. I was like, in this mini comic, this character is used with the concept name. So, but then later, when it got approved, they showed me that, well, we'll put it at the very bottom of all the pages. And that's when I realized that, I actually have to be more specific about that. In this page and in the here panel, something happens, and try and be as descriptive as I could. Though some of them still got put maybe like a page too far on before or later, so they don't always match. Had I known it was going to be that sort of format, I probably would have tried finding something on every other page to just add some text, because the mini comics are such a wonderful time capsule. I think I've said it a couple times before. It really shows the evolution of the stories, of the people working on them, and just all the concepts, and you get to see how the toys looked before the final action figure, but you never knew why it was until you see actual concept art that came in the art of He-Man or other sources that have been awesome, that we've gotten them online from people like Mark Taylor or whatever from Battle Ram blog is one of those cases, and Foundation, and just all that stuff. It really helps illustrate that what was the thinking behind everything, and it's a reason why many things are the way they are, because everything was in such a flux at the time. But there are still mysteries I'd like to see, like how did some concept art look and what the color schemes were. And
I gotta thank you, because the trivia parts of everything are one of my favorite parts, and especially that mini comic collection. I remember thumbing through it even before I sat down and reread all the old mini comics. I was just thumbing through it, just looking at the trivia, like, oh look, they talked about this. Or, I knew that, I didn't know that, So it took it to a next level. I'm glad you hounded Val about that.
yeah, Val put his foot forward there and made it happen. So I'm very happy about it, because the book basically sells itself. I mean, it has like all the vintage mini comics and some of the newer ones, and there's unseen mini comic and unreleased script and just everything. So it had I never contacted anyone, it would have still been an awesome product that everyone should have on their shelf. And recently I actually learned that Val mentioned it on the forums that it's gotten reprinted like 6 times, and it's the most reprinted one of the Dark Horse books. So it warms the heart. And that led to the newspaper strips that came where Danielle Galerter was handling it mostly. I helped get some Greek papers where they had the newspaper strips. So they had some more color versions, because some countries colored them differently from others. So I got a small note there in Danielle was very kind. She wrote in her introduction piece and mentioned me there. I think I was mentally prepared that maybe they'll just put my name somewhere in like special thanks section, very, 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 very small print. But Danielle actually mentioned me there. So
she's a great lady. Very nice, very kind.
You should get her on this podcast.
I hope we can land her somewhere. She's actually about the second person who reached out to me after you. So it only felt right to have you as the first guest host. But I wouldn't be surprised if we can't lure Danielle on here one of these days.
Yeah.
And then
she can't do this episode, though, because I know she's an Orko fan, but we already stole her thunder on this one for 2000.
If anything, we'd probably try and get her in to talk about the newspaper strips, because I know that was a project for her. I mean, she had to go all the way around the world, basically. Not herself, but with fans like Jukka and some other guys there, here and there. She went all around the world trying to gather all those together. That's a saga in and of itself.
It's a story worth telling. Hopefully I get to hear it at some point.
Yeah.
And well, at the time they were fully making the books. They had the animated guide from James, who had done the majority of the work already with his unofficial guide. So, but the added and updated information is very much appreciated, and
the pictures.
Yeah, the pretty pictures.
That helps a lot.
It's a awesome addition, and from there they had which seemed at the time that might be the last book that will get a character guide, and that's like for me it is right up my alley. I mean,
Yes.
I had a hand that cover is something I laid out.
Awesome.
There's a whole story that I wanted to get the Alfredo Alcala image in the smaller thumbnail images because it had been on the bigger picture earlier, but I looked at the earlier releases of the books and noticed that no Alcala image had been in one of those smaller images. So I was like, that we need to get that there. And then I made suggestions on the Filmation and New Adventures and MYP. And at the time, the DC Comics was still very much on everyone's mind. So there was an awesome image there that sort of bookends everything. At one point, I tried to suggest as many images where He-Man's face would be like almost looking in the same direction, but then New Adventures is looking kind of backwards on them, so it's like it's already its own bookend there. And obviously the William George art, it was a great one to have because we already had gotten the Earl Norm one, so William George was a shoe-in, but it also just happened to be a great poster artwork that showcased so many characters, and I think it was a good way to establish that this is what this book is about. There were some ideas where it would be like maybe just the main characters and World of Eternia somewhere in the background, and some of this information is in Spanish on the Mundo Masters image where the magazine where they had an interview with me, but not everyone speaks Spanish, so this is one way to get that info out there. But yeah, that was a culmination for me that there would be character guide with just figures, vehicles, locations, spells, and just everything, and that we were not going to be like trying to make it into a narrative like bios.
Thank you.
On classics. It was that each canon will get their own respect in a way,
and that's and
what
it
would
about
be
it.
Yeah, and it's the best way in this situation to, I think, to really hone in that how you showcase all of these. It's not just mini comics and Filmation. And actually, the Filmation image on the cover was something that Val suggested. I think I had other image, something from Transformation. I think that I tried to pitch in, but he felt that He-Man looking at the viewer would look much nicer, and he was right.
Oh yeah.
And
the end result is perfect, and it's never far from me, especially with this podcast going on. I've always got it within an arm's reach here, so in case I don't know something, I can quickly look it up. And it's everything I ever wanted out of a He-Man book, and something I never thought would happen to the extent to where, I mean, you know, you guys go into the Magic Boy comics and the German stuff and Ladybird, and it's like, you know, I just flipped to a page where the cow from the '87 movie has his own little thing. It's like,
it's a pipe dream that I also had when I was younger. That, I mean, because I've seen that there are like those character guides for Capcom characters or Turtles or G.I. Joe, Transformers, or Star Wars that have visual guides, and well, they have a whole book series for the trash can that moves around in the Death Star, and it's like it's something that I hoped He-Man would achieve at some point, that there could be information about these things. And well, I am still sort of hoping that at some point we would get comics that would be like very just short, character-driven, maybe like how DC did they had these Superman digital comics where all the like restrictions at the time were off. Like movies had the no pants thing, and the comics also were like the underpants, however you. But like they did these digital only comics that later were collected in trades, but all the writers, artists, they were given like free reign that you can do whatever version of Superman, and like you can, and just very short little stories where you showcase what the inner strength of the character is and how the world works. And I think in one of the podcasts from way back then, I think I mentioned that is something I'd like for He-Man, that you could have a little comic story where we would just deal with some side character in a Star Wars sort of fashion, that we would learn more about them, and it doesn't need to be like this deep lore thing, or it doesn't have to have like, oh, now Grayskull blows up again for the third time. It's like, but we'll have to see if the fandom and the general public will take upon He-Man with the as more actually toys get on retail, and the 2 Netflix shows, and going back on the Dark Horse thing, the last I've heard, I mean, I'm also in the dark to a degree.
Yes, but
so
we got something
even
exciting coming, hopefully by the end of the year, right?
we'll have to see how things pan out. If it's I think Pixel Dan mentioned it on Patreon or something somewhere, and that the toy guide that he and Val have been doing and teasing people for months and months and months, which I think covers a lot, like from the 80s He-Man to New Adventures and She-Ra figures and the classics. I mean, not sure, they don't probably touch like any merchandise stuff, and they don't go too deep into variants, as I recall. Val mentioned that so nobody should have like high expectations that there's like 17 He-Man variants mentioned in the book,
like the country of origin type of things. Like they're not showing Taiwan and Malaysia and all that, but I think other than that, it'll probably hit all the big points. But then again, the Val's been known to surprise us before with going a little more in depth than you expect. So
we'll have to see. I'm very excited for that. And there was a new book where I got to help, which will be a supplemental edition for the character guide. So
that's what I'm excited about.
so everything that we didn't have time or space or just access or something at the time in the character guide and world compendium, we've included in the supplemental. So it's getting really, really into the very niche of obscure things that just, and also some corrections that what might have been typoed or misplaced in the original book. So this will have a chance to correct that information as well. It'll be a bit smaller book because there's not all that much stuff to cover, and I think Daniel is still looking for some Italian comics on a weekly basis. I don't know, and trying to get them translated. But the toy guide is the big deal, and I think it'll be available everywhere. The supplemental, as much as I've heard, is it'll be sold online, and it'll be like a pack-in that if you buy the toy guide, you can get the supplemental. Hopefully Val will at some point have more details about it. This whole pandemic is throwing some things off and probably pushing some deadlines, but we'll see where we stand at the end of the year. And the solicitations are still something that Dark Horse will put out in their own pace.
Right.
So we'll have to wait for them to make the first move.
Yep. But we're excited for it. I can't wait. So, well, that's been an episode. I think we've ran the gamut, and I want to personally thank Jukka for coming on here. It was a great episode. Nice to talk to you in person finally. And Shawn, any wrap up thoughts, questions, anything?
Thank you, Yuka, for being on today, and it's always a pleasure to talk 2000X for me. So it was extra special to go. Ooh, guest host and 2000X.
Yeah.
So no worries there. And honestly, we hope we can get you back on sometime again. Talk about maybe your second favorite 2000X or some of your favorite Filmation, whichever way you want to go. Dealer's choice.
We'll get him on to talk about all the ideas about season 3. That's what we'll get him on for.
I need plenty of Kleenex for how much I'll be crying listening to all that, because it was bad enough the other week when I heard Scott Knightlick going, "Yeah, we were going to do 2000X after Filmation," and I'm like, "No, why are you doing this to me?"
If we ever touch that subject of what could have been, we definitely got to get Jukka back on. Otherwise, we'll just be sending out wrong information again.
Probably. I mean, hell, I showed my true colors the day I thanked him for the assist there. But yeah, he was like, "Wait a minute, you forgot this whole part." I'm like, "That's my favorite part. How did I forget that?" Oh yeah, okay. So so thank you also for that as well. Thank you for the assist and helping me out.
And real quick, I did want to especially thank Jukka, and I almost forgot about it. He did design our newly updated Legends of Grayskull podcast logo that I've been using for the main image and everything. And that just out of the kindness of man's heart. I'm just like, I'm chilling with my family one day, and a message pops up from him, and he's like, "Hey, look at this." And I'm like, "That's awesome. Can I use that for the podcast?" And he's like, "Sure." So, thank you, Jukka, for the support, for the graphic, for coming on with us. It's been a blast.
Thanks for having me. It's been a very, very long time since I was in a podcast, and maybe people have forgotten me. That's why I'm starting up the videos again this year, and some new series will be coming out there.
And he's got some good
these
stuff.
Guys here have gotten a small glimpse of it, but they can't say anything about it.
Nope.
Nope. But you guys,
I'm looking forward to
it.
seeing more.
Yes.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the things you're going to cover with that. So we'll leave it at that.
Yep.
I'll put in a good word. Maybe I'll get into that Council of the First Ones podcast, which I've never been part of any which way.
Oh, okay.
That's surprising because they've interviewed just about everybody else.
Yeah, like we've talked to Melanie Britt, we've talked to William Stout, we talked to both Roger Sweet and Mark Taylor and Rebecca Taylor and all this. We've had a ton of people, and it's amazing you haven't been on that. So I'll definitely bring it up to Renee and say, hey, he's looking to maybe be on the show at some point. Definitely.
I'm sort of pulling your leg. I was part of the starting formation.
Oh well, I'll still mention it because the fact that you're doing your videos though, that would be something I'm sure they'd like to talk about, because they even brought Scott on when he started his Spectre Creative videos now.
Honestly, I didn't start listening to Council until Shawn actually joined it, so that is one I missed somehow throughout. I listened to Masters Cast a little bit, Rose Google, obviously, your comic cast, but for some reason, somehow Council, the first one, slipped by me all those years. So otherwise,
I'll also apologize because podcasts have only been something I jumped into 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Like in any way, shape, or form. So for me, it's like, I know there has been other ones who, like Rose Google, like you said, and some of the other ones from before, but if they're not on iTunes where I can access them easily when I do my searches, I'm not getting them right now. Yeah. So I know there's a history, and I feel bad I wasn't a part of a lot of that. So,
all right, Jukka, anything else you want to plug? Say anything?
share this video, like and subscribe, and comment. I need to grow the channel. There's roughly over 1,000 subscribers, but Scott has also basically gone over that amount, so I need to get
Absolutely
a fast one on him or something. But yeah, I'm making more videos. I had a hiatus with real life for some years, but getting back on track now, and hopefully we'll find a proper schedule at some point. This pandemic also sort of has affected many of aspects in there, but I have so many topics I want to be doing, and always looking forward to people commenting, because I've had some very good ideas from just people like you. They just come up to me and ask something that, hey, have you talked about this or whatever, and it's a good inspiration to always continue working. And I'm especially trying to hone my editing skills, because my earlier videos, they were very lackluster. The editing program was good for the time, but it's very simple techniques, and currently I'm trying to learn something new every time and a bit more finesse, and we'll see how it goes. The people have seemed to enjoy them, and
they're amazing.
We'll see where it all goes, and by the time we get the 2 Netflix animated shows, I'll try to cover those on my videos. I'd love to do proper analysis videos. There was this whole time on YouTube where they did like video essays of film and whatever, and I'm like so jealous of all those people, because they had very awesome narration and the points that they would make, and the editing, and just everything was something that I strive to with my own stuff. But more origin videos will be coming. The name at some point used to be Scrolls of Eternia, but I've had to sort of let that go. Because at one point I wasn't sure if somebody would come after me for using it. So the channel is simply Toon Jukka, and I'll have segments where the name might be whatever, but I won't be actually using a trademarked name as the whole video thing, so trying to be careful there. The YouTube things also are interesting, because I use a whole lot of cartoon materials and such, but need to go around it so the won't claim any of that. I've learned my lessons there as well, but
yeah, we're playing it fast and loose over here. If someone pulls us down, then I'll change some stuff. But you know,
it's how the nature of the beast works. But more stuff is coming, and thank you for having me on this podcast, so I can chill about all that stuff. And shout out to all the people on He-Man.org and Battle Ram blog, who's also been very supportive, and
and I'll have links to all that down below. I'm going to pretty much echo Jukka right now, because I'm only hovering around like 50 subscribers. So please like, share, subscribe, ring that bell so you know when something premieres. Go visit Toon Jukka first and do him first, but then come back and do us. And yeah, if you drop a comment down below, it helps us grow the channel, and we like to hear what people are thinking. We don't like to talk to the void. So, and who knows, if you message me and correct me, maybe you'll be on the show someday like Jukka.
There you go.
So
that's one way to do it.
That's it. So thank you, Shawn. Thank you, Jukka. This has been an absolute blast, and until next time.
Until next time.
Good journey.
I knew he was gonna mess with us somehow. I just knew
Well,
it.
we got all aspects covered. It's okay.
We're all good.